You said 4 words in a meeting 3 days ago, and you're still thinking about them right now. Not because they mattered, because of how one person's face changed when you said them. You've replayed it maybe 30 times since then. You've rewritten what you should have said instead, in the shower, in traffic, right before you fell asleep last night, and probably again this morning. You've built an entire alternate version of that meeting, where you said something sharper, smarter, and some part of you plays it on a loop like it actually happened. Meanwhile, the person whose face changed hasn't thought about it once. Not once. They've moved on to their own version of this exact same problem, starring someone else entirely. That gap between how much you're suffering for it and how much they're not is not an accident, and it is not random. That gap is the entire subject of this video. Here's what's actually happening to you. You've been living your whole life inside a courtroom. Not a real one you built yourself, brick by brick, without ever once deciding to. Every room you walk into, some part of you takes the stand, waiting for a verdict from a jury that was never actually seated in the first place. It's not just meetings either. It's the message you sent and immediately regretted, the outfit you changed 3 times before leaving the house, the joke that landed wrong at dinner 2 years ago that you still think about sometimes, for no reason, at random. The comment count on something you posted, checked 40 times in an hour, doing quiet math on who showed up and who didn't. There are 4 specific things wrong with this courtroom you've built. Once you see all 4 clearly, you don't have to keep showing up to a trial that was never real to begin with. Part 1. The courtroom isn't real. Psychologists have an actual name for what happened to you in that meeting. It's called the spotlight effect. In one well-known version of the research, someone was sent into a room full of strangers wearing a shirt with a deliberately embarrassing image on it. Walking in, they were certain the whole room would clock it and remember it. Afterward, they guessed that close to half the room had noticed. The real number, when the room was actually asked, was closer to a quarter. People overestimate how much they're being watched by roughly double, almost every time this gets tested, and the pattern holds far beyond embarrassing shirts. People wildly overestimate how much others notice them, remember them, or sit around judging them, because every single person in that room is starring in their own courtroom, not yours. The coworker whose face changed, they weren't thinking about you for the rest of that day. They were thinking about their own version of your 4 words, something they said earlier that same morning that nobody else remembers either. You were not the main character in the room you just left. Nobody is, ever. Not really. Everyone who walked out of that meeting was running their own trial, and you had a supporting role in maybe 1 or 2 of them, for about 4 seconds total. It's not an insult. If anything, it's the best news you'll get all week. Most of the jury you're so afraid of was never even sitting in the room. Part 2. The jury has no jurisdiction. Even in the rare case where someone actually is thinking about you, actually is forming a real opinion, here's the part that changes everything once you let it fully land. Their opinion was never yours to control. Not a little bit of it. Not with the right outfit, the right comeback, the perfectly edited version of the story. What they decide to think happens entirely inside their own head, built from their own history, their own insecurities, whatever kind of day they were already having before you walked in, none of which you have access to, and none of which you can steer from the outside. You could rehearse the perfect response for a week straight, and it still wouldn't guarantee the outcome you want, because the outcome was never sitting in your hands to begin with. It was sitting in theirs. You only ever had control over one single thing in that entire meeting, what you actually said and whether it was honest and fair when you said it. That part is finished. It's done. You already did it, and no amount of replaying it tonight is going to reach back and edit what you said 3 days ago. Everything that's happened since then, every replay, every rewrite, every imagined verdict running on a loop in your head, that's you arguing a case in a courtroom where the jury already packed up and went home hours ago. Quick gut check before we go further. Name one specific person whose opinion you're currently losing sleep over, right now, today. Got them in your head? Now ask yourself honestly, when was the last time that exact person reorganized their entire week because of something you thought about them? If the honest answer is never, sit with that for a second. The math has been running in one direction your entire life, and it was never the direction you assumed it was. You've been paying interest on a debt the other person doesn't even know exists. Part 3. You hired the wrong judge. Not every opinion deserves a hearing, but you've been letting almost anyone onto the bench without ever checking their credentials, without asking a single question about whether they're even qualified to rule on your life. Here's the actual test. Before you let someone's judgment cost you a single night of sleep, ask one honest question. Do you actually respect how this person lives their own life? Not their job title. Not how confidently they carry themselves in a room. Their real character, the way they treat people who can't do anything for them, the choices they've made when nobody else was watching. Think about the specific person you named a minute ago. Have you actually watched how they handle their own hard days, their own relationships, their own mistakes? Or have you just assumed their judgment carries weight because they seemed sure of themselves in a room once? If the honest answer is no, if you wouldn't trade your life for theirs for even one single day, then why does their verdict get a vote in yours? You've been granting courtroom access to people whose own lives you wouldn't accept advice from if they offered it to you directly, to your face. That's not humility. That's just not paying attention to who's actually sitting on the bench you built. Part 4. You're here to act, not to win the verdict. There's an old idea, older than almost anything else in this video, that you've been handed a part to play, like an actor walking out onto a stage, and your entire job, the only job that was ever actually yours, is to play that part with full commitment and total honesty. Not to control how the audience receives it, not to manage the reviews that come in afterward. The reviews were never even part of the job description to begin with. Nobody handed you a script that said your task was to be universally liked. They handed you one specific part, your part, and asked you to play it well. An actor who spends the whole performance staring at the front row, trying to read their faces in real time, gives a worse performance than one who's fully inside the scene. You already know this because you've felt it before. The days you did your best work, said the honest thing, showed up completely. Those were never the days you were monitoring the crowd. Those were the days you forgot the crowd existed at all. That's not a coincidence. That's exactly what happens the moment you stop performing for a verdict and start actually playing the part you were given. So go back to that meeting. The 4 words, the face that changed, the 30 replays since. The courtroom was never real. Most of the jury wasn't even watching. They were too busy running their own trial to notice yours. The part of the verdict that actually mattered was never yours to control in the first place. And the one person you were so afraid of when you actually look closely at how they live might not even deserve a vote. Nobody handed them a gavel. You're the one who put it in their hand. You weren't there to win a verdict. You were there to say something honest and play your part well. You already did that part 3 days ago. The rest was never the job, and it was never going to be. You just forgot that somewhere between the meeting and tonight. If you've been living in a courtroom that was never real, consider this your notice. Delivered a little late, but still valid. Case dismissed. Walk out, and don't bother locking the door behind you. Nobody was ever going to follow you out. To argue the verdict